Hi, everybody, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I am so glad that you guys all decided to listen in on this awesome conversation that we're going to be having today. I am so excited to dig in deep to the conversation that we are going to be talking about. It's all about marriages, guys, and just making your relationship stronger and less complicated and just happier to be around the person that you love so much. And today I have with me Angela Sloan. Angela, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. So background a little bit on Angela and I. So Angela's husband and my husband played for the Detroit Lions together. They were both tight ends. Dave played a bit longer than Kevin, and they played during the little Barry Sanders era. So they had a great team, just wasn't able to execute fully, but they had the talent there. And Angela and Dave live in Texas with their 4 kids. Kevin and I are in Las Vegas with our 5 kids. So together we've got a party going on, Angela, when you think about it, all of our kids. Angela is an LCSW and she has been practicing for 17 years. She is going to come on here and give us some expert advice on different ways to handle different situations that come up in marriage, specifically to what NFL wives deal with a lot. But I'll be honest with you, whether you're an NFL wife or not, this is going to help you because it's just relationships in general. So stay tuned and stay plugged in. It's going to be a short but very powerful segment. You don't want to miss it. So Angela, thank you so much again for being here. First things I want to talk about is, when I was with Kevin and he was playing in the NFL, we had a typical relationship for an NFL wife where, we didn't have kids yet because we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working and he was working. And so some of the complications that some of the NFL wives deal with, I didn't really deal with personally, because while he was at work, I was at work. When we got home, we're both exhausted. We most of the time went out to eat. We, did little chores together when he was off. So there wasn't like a whole lot of responsibility on me per se as the wife being at home. But I will say a lot of my friends that were in the NFL who had children while their husbands were playing had a much different relationship and a much different outlook on the way the relationship should be. I know some of the wives still today feel like there's a lot of pressure on them. There's a lot of responsibility on them, and that they don't really have a quote unquote husband to go to vent or talk about or get a helping hand, because these guys are so busy. Right now we're going to be heading into the playoffs. There's a lot of pressure on a lot of these guys. And so the wives feel this intense pressure that everything is on them.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of segueing to normal life, same thing. If you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a stay-at-home wife and your husband's out there working, making the bank, it's kind of like everything on that house is yours to deal with. And sometimes that can create animosity. It can cause anxiety and issues in a marriage. And so today I just want to talk about like solutions to that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to have the anxiety and the frustrations with each other because expectations are not being met. So with all that and that kind of introduction, kind of give me your thoughts on, when you're counseling married couples, where do you see the breakdown when it comes to problems like that in the marriage?
I think the biggest problem I see is lack of communication. And also how each person perceives whether it's your own role or your role for the other person, and what those expectations are around that.
Yeah, it's true. We do kind of go into it, and perception is reality. It's one of my favorite sayings. And, one person may feel like she's got it easy. All she has to do is be at home and cook and clean and take care of the kids, right? And then the wife is thinking he's got it easy. He gets to go work out all day and hit people. I'd love to do that, right? So they both are coming at it from different perceptions of what the other person is doing at home. And that alone can cause a lot of conflict when someone doesn't feel like they're respected or heard or appreciated. And so when you're in that little form of conflict within your marriage, what are like everyday life tips and tricks? What are some different types of things that we can do in our marriage to solve these problems before they become a blow up? Because I'll tell you, NFL marriages, they last sometimes as long as the careers last, not very long, and I don't like that. I want to see them last longer. They have children and families, and sometimes just one little thing can just go blow up into a big thing, and it doesn't have to. So go ahead and give us some tips and tricks.
So I think, and I can speak to when David was coaching. When I met him, he was a D1 coach, so he had already retired, and he had 2 girls of his own. And I was working full time, and then when we had our kids, I quit and was there full time with the kids and that. And I think one of the things that helped me personally in that was just my, whether it's my perception or my mindset around my role in that time. And so for me, it was like, hey, I don't have to work. I get to be home. I get this luxury. Maybe we had kids later in life, or I had kids later. So that helped that mindset. But I think the other thing too is I had a good teammate when he was not off the field, or when he was off the field. Sorry. So when he was not on the field, he knew how to be a teammate, and so did I. And I think that is peril when you are talking about making a relationship work, is that you are just as much a team member as he is in your home.
Yeah, that's a great point. And did you guys have to work through that, or was David automatically like on board with sharing responsibilities in the house?
I think, well, he was very helpful a lot.
Not
right?
to dog him out. I'm not
No. He's phenomenal. Like because he was married and divorced, right? And he was on his own with his girls for a little while before we were together. I feel like he had a good understanding of what that meant to do that job and to raise kids. And, his kids were 8 and 10 when we met. And so they were a little bit, not so much older, but they were a little bit older, that he had a fair understanding of what it took to be that all the time person. And so I think that was helpful because when it came to rough moments in pregnancy, or I would come home from work really tired, or, rough days with the kids, he was more understanding than I think maybe some people get in that season of life.
Right. So what would be advice to, let's say, these kids coming out of college and they have the relationship, they're married, they have 2, 3 young ones, and they're in the NFL, and the husband really hasn't had life experiences to teach him how to be a responsible partner or teammate in the marriage. How as the wife, like, how do you even get him to realize that? Like, what are some steps that they can take as the partner to get them to come on board and realize those things?
I think that age is just a maturity factor, right? So whether you are in the NFL, whether you're starting a career, no matter what that is, and you have children young, it's always going to be hard. Having kids is hard. Like, there's no way around it, right? And but I think too, trying to figure out how to talk to him and say, like, I need you as a member of my team here just as much as there. And then what are those expectations, right? And are your expectations realistic with the responsibilities that he has to provide this life that he's able to provide right now in this season?
Yeah, and I love that you say in this season, in the NFL, we understand season, right? You're in season, off season. And sometimes the season of life is a few years. And if you're blessed and lucky enough to be longer than that, 10, 15 years. But it is a season. And so as the wife, as the partner who's kind of holding down the fort while they're out in the season of life, sometimes we do have to take a step back and say, okay, this is his time, but it doesn't mean that your time is never. It could be that we just have to kind of shift things around a little bit, and maybe you put things on hold. But there are marriages where the wives don't put things on hold. They have careers, they're also raising children, and you can make it work. I just think that getting to the point of communication and not assuming that he knows or that she knows, like, you really have to communicate and talk. I know that you are very fond and love this exercise that you have that you do with your clients. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So one of the things that I think is helpful, and I think it's helpful not just to do it once, but to do it, revisit it, whether it's annually or when a season changes in your life. You have a child, now your kids are in school, and as the roles and responsibilities change with your household, to revisit this list of expectations, right? And so the first step of the list of expectations is to sit down, whether it's, sometimes it's easier to write it out. If you don't have a partner that would write it out, then maybe just use it as a springboard to talk about for conversation. But just identifying, like, what are the expectations that you have for yourself, and what you have for your partner. Okay. And so being able to say, okay, here's 20 expectations or 10 or whatever number you want to come up with. I think that 15 to 20 is reasonable, because you can be as superficial and as deep as you want, right? So, the 15, 20 expectations that I have for my partner. So I'm going to say, you know what, David, I expect that, if I'm not feeling well, that you're going to help out with the kids, or you're going to help with the dishes, or, that if whatever it is, I expect you to be nice and lean, or whatever, right? As superficial as you want, but, and then on so you write down yours, and then the other side, you write like half that. It's like 10 expectations that you think your partner has of you. And sometimes that's very eye-opening, because you may think that they have expectations of you that they don't have at all. And sometimes you're right on the money. Yeah. Right. And so in your ability to manage your expectations, this pressure that we either is put on us or we perceive is put on us, we're able to talk about that and manage that, right? So first is identifying because we all have expectations, whether we say them out loud or not, right? We're all going to have expectations of everybody in our lives, right? Whether it's of our children, of their teachers, of our boss, of whoever, right? We all have these expectations. And so being able to identify, this is what I expect of you, whether it's a given situation, whether it's overall, whether it's that you're not going to go blow all of our money on gambling, like whatever that is, right? And so being able to identify what that is. And then the next step is use that as like I said, a springboard conversation, and trade the lists. And then on those lists, you're going to identify and just make a little mark next to each one of what is easy. So yeah, easy peasy, no problem. I can do that, right? If you cook, I'll do the dishes. Got it. That's fair, right? If it is, you know what, that'll take work. Like, it maybe isn't my go-to thing. It maybe isn't something that I would think of doing. I'm not against it, but like, that's fair. So you put a little W next to it. And the last one is like, this is absolutely unrealistic. This is never going to happen. This expectation is way too high, whatever that is, right? Like, I don't know if you ever watched How I Met Your Mother, but I went and rewatched that. And like, one of the things in the prenup that Barney had before he was going to get married was like, you can't gain any time you gain more than a pound or something like that. It was like, you owed so much money. Like, that's unrealistic, right? Like, we're going to get pregnant. We're going to go through menopause. Like, we're going to fluctuate in life, right? So like, is it unrealistic to say like, you can't gain more than 5 pounds, right? So,
right.
And then to take that and to talk about why, right? So step 3, why is that difficult for you? Why is that not like, I don't understand why you can't do that. Right. And so,
or even like, why is it important to you, right? To find out why, because it could be from childhood reasons that they have an issue. And so bringing that out, I love that, finding out the why, because I think that's so important. You understand each other a lot more when you understand the why.
Yeah. And so being able to tease some of this out, and like, if he is a words of affirmation person and he needs that, good job, you're awesome, you're this, and let's face it, our guys do, right? They are in this spotlight that they need this like feeding of the ego in a lot of ways. Most guys, right? Not just ours, but like people who make it to a certain level don't make it there without praise. And so being able to, and the other thing too is that like David, he wants that praise, but he also wants me to be soft with him, right? And not harsh. And maybe that's because they get a lot of that on the field and they don't need that when they get home, I don't know.
Right.
But or how it's received, right? And so for me, that's not my or for a while it wasn't my like go to, and I was kind of like, oh, like you're this football player, like you can take it, it's no big deal, like toughen up a little bit. But that's not reality, right? And that's not how. So when I was brash or abrasive, it was like just nails on a chalkboard, like I was stabbing in the back. And so I had to bring it back, and I had to go, okay, he needs me to be soft in my response, even if I'm upset, whatever. Like I need to learn to change how I'm interacting with him for us to have a better relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was a work one, right? Didn't come naturally to me, but I'm not unwilling to do it because that's how he receives love in a way that I don't speak it very well.
Right.
So,
I love that.
And then sometimes being able to see those, and you can tie them to like, what are your goals as a couple? So what are your financial goals? What are your family goals? What are your, career goals, that sort of thing. So do those other things tie into these goals of things down the road? Because if you want to be married in 50 years, this stuff matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the end goal, is to be happily married throughout the rest of your life. And doing these exercises, I love that you say it's not just a one-time thing. How about we have an annual retreat where, mom and dad get away and we do this on an annual retreat, and we kind of set the tone for the next year. I wouldn't recommend like tonight sitting down when they're thinking of playoffs doing this, but I think that like just getting ready for it and kind of preparing, like knowing if you are in a season of chaos in your marriage where you feel things are not equal, where you feel things are a little bit lopsided in responsibilities, know that there is this exercise that you can kind of mentally start preparing for, so that when they are done with the season and they don't have the pressure of the season, go take a weekend away, just the two of you, and incorporate something like this. And whether it's formal where you're sitting down and actually writing, or just a back and forth discussion, I think something like this is awesome to incorporate, and who knows, could save a lot of headache in a lot of marriages. So
yeah, I would like to caution one thing. Sometimes this can turn into like a tit for tat, right? Like we're relationships were not to keep score. It's not, right. I did this, you did this. Well, if you do this, I'll do this, or I do this, and this, right? And sometimes when we have resentment built up in a relationship, that scoreboard becomes glaring. And because we are seeing all the things that we do, and we're not seeing the things that the other person does, or the sacrifices the other person makes. We can only see the sacrifices that we make. And so, and again, like, what are the expectations for him in season, and what are the expectations out of season? Because there's going to be two very different things.
That's such a good point. I'm so glad that you said that, because both of those things are really super important, and it's a mindset that you have to go into this conversation with. So that's really good. All right. So I know that you're in Texas, and you currently can only practice in Texas, correct? Correct. So anybody that is out there in Texas, if they want to get a hold of you and kind of dig a little bit deeper, reach out to you to get some help, how can somebody reach out to you?
My website's still under development, but right now you can find me on Psychology Today. So you can just Google, Psychology Today, put me in Houston, and you'll find me.
Okay, awesome. And do you do Zoom?
It's an online platform. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
You have to have a HIPAA compliant platform, but yeah, it's okay. It's virtual. Yeah.
And any Instagram, any social media?
Working on it.
Girl, if you can stay off, I say stay off, but it is good to have those.
Working on it for business purposes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to just bring up before we end is when you have a partner who is absolutely unwilling to participate, let's just call a spade a spade. Some of these guys, they have egos right now out to here because they have so much success.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that they do anything wrong. They don't want to hear that they have to do anything. They just want to do the work and come home and not have any responsibilities. And if it's a person worth saving the relationship with, if you have kids and a family and all this, what are some tips do you have for a wife that is in a relationship with somebody like that? How do they get through that, knowing eventually he's going to probably come around?
Right. I feel like, that's a topic we can go on to for a couple of days, but I feel like, one, being able to phrase it of, from you, I need, right? And so using those I statements to say, like, I need this from you, or when this happens, I feel this, and not to make it something that can be defensive with him in. Because anytime you're going to call someone out and they've got, big egos or whatever, then they're going to get defensive. And it's going to be, well, I did this and I did this and I provide for this family and I do all this stuff. And all you have to do is this, right? But it's like, I need for us to, maybe it's a team thing, right? Like, because they understand the teamwork aspect. I need to know that we're a team, and I need to have this, whether it's this conversation, or I need to know what these expectations are, because I'm feeling a lot of pressure and I'm feeling like I don't meet up to your expectations, or, are these perceived expectations that I have that aren't real. And maybe they are real. I mean,
right.
So what does that look like?
Absolutely. Yeah. And just remember, like we said kind of earlier, it is a season and this too shall pass, and things do, situations change, mindsets change, and their egos do get a little deflated when they stop playing. So sometimes they're a little bit more willing to have these conversations at those points in time. So just hang in there and reach out to Angela, psychologytoday.com. Go in there and search for Angela Sloan. She's in Texas, and join us on Wellness Wednesdays, guys. Wellness is not just about what you put in your body or exercising. It is a healthy relationship with your significant other, with the people around you, with your children. That all ties into wellness. And so we have to make sure that we're really cognitive of that and making sure that we're healthy in all aspects in our life. So anyway, well, thank you, Angela. And we will be back next week with some more topics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.